the better, right? So I'll call the meeting to order. This is the executive committee meeting of the 4th of August. That'd be right already. So the agenda, we'll go marching through it, Jim, and it's really, I'll send it over to you, section
Okay.
53.
Thank you.
Application. You can carry on from there.
Well, the first item has to do with our annual review of 5310 applications. Those are applications for funds that would fund vehicles for seniors and other folks with disabilities, as well as it funds what's called non-traditional programs, and those are the applications we receive from ECTC and possibly transit districts. Kate and Justin reviewed these this year. We did receive 7 what's called traditional applications, but 1 was deemed incomplete despite our staff's best efforts to assist, and 3 non-traditional. Kate, I'm going to turn it over to you and Justin to explain the applications and walk the executive committee through the memo that was attached to the agenda, please. Thank you.
Morning, everyone.
Morning.
So because this is a federal formula grant program, the Norwich, New London area gets apportioned $189,613. In addition to those funds, we have some claim. However, we don't have any discretion with the rural and small urban funds, of which there's almost $800,000. And so we try and fully utilize our Norwich, New London sub-allocation, and then we also try and advocate for commitments from the DOT to fund some additional projects. What we have received in terms of the applications is very typical from last year. So it's the voucher program from ECTC, also the mobility program, which funds the mobility manager. She goes out and does outreach to senior living facilities and senior centers and better educates the seniors on how to access the various programs that are available to them. So not just that voucher program, but also the demand response program and VOIA, whatever they're able to access. And then WRTD has put in an application for the Danielson service, the Wyndham-Danielson line to provide additional runs per day. So currently they only have 2. They wanted to double it. And that was a 2-year request for $105,000 and change. And that was similar to last year's. One of the challenges that still persists is that the large majority of the benefit is outside of our region. And so, you know, that it's harder to support down here when it doesn't fit our geography. Then in terms of the traditional, we received applications from the Arc, Waterford, Ledyard, Griswold, Colchester, Ledyard, Easter Seals. New London was our disqualified applicant, and they were disqualified because they did not put in a public notice. So it's a requirement. And unfortunately, there wasn't much that we could do, and DOT confirmed that even if they tried to amend it, they wouldn't be able to because the public notice had to be served by a certain date. So they are out of the running. Our high score.
Could I just note for the executive committee's edification, New London has been quite successful the last few years in securing these funds. Don't know if it was change in staffing working on this that resulted in the missed legal notice. They even put in their application, no, they did not publish the legal notice. They They acknowledge that. But we'll work hard with them next year, so hopefully they'll get back in the running and have an eligible application. But I just want you to know they've received several vehicles over the last few years under this program. Thank you, Kate. Excuse me.
Yeah, no worries. In our memo, we've asked for quite a bit more than is our due. And we've also provided the scoring that we have done, that Justin and I went through, with ARC being our top traditional application, then Waterford, Ledyard, Griswold, Colchester, Easter Seals. I can't imagine that they're going to fund all of them, but hopefully it's our hope that they'll fund everybody down through Colchester, so omit Easter Seals in New London and the Wyndham project. However, it may not be as rosy as that.
Kate, could you just hit upon some of the metrics that are used to measure these applications? Would you just mention some of them? Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Jim?
Yes.
Can I interrupt? I have Kevin Blacker in the waiting room. Were you expecting him?
He's allowed on the call. It is a public meeting, yes.
Okay.
He's
I'll let him in.
interested in item number 3.
Okay.
Just
great.
let him know we're on item number 1, and he can come in now, though.
Okay.
In terms of the metrics for the 5310 program, you know, you have these basic things in terms of, you know, whether they've submitted all of the public notice and signed the application and box checking like that. But then it goes on, you are eligible for a new vehicle if your current vehicle that you're replacing is 4 years old. However, there are no points awarded for that. It's only once your vehicle has reached its useful life expectancy of 7 years or 100,000 miles that you get the big points for that. There's planning process points that talk about working with, you know, meeting the target need and working with others to try and help that. So for example, Waterford and East Lyme, I believe, you know, do some senior service van work together. So it's benefiting more than one town. That sort of thing speaks well, or if you are reaching out with veterans groups. You know, and then there's a lot of points awarded for providing a lot of service. So if it's Monday through Saturday and you're into the evening, that's a lot of points. Also the degree of need, if you're hitting those if there isn't another service available, for example, ARC and Easter Seals meet groups that can't utilize standard transit. So so they typically rank highly for that. And, you know, then just budgeting stuff, like you need to be able to fill out the form properly.
Great. Thank you.
Yep.
I would add to what Kate said earlier. We've been really successful in asking for more than we were originally told was available to our region. I would urge you to continue to ask. It never hurts to ask. And hopefully, you know, Kate will write a very convincing and compelling email and will receive more money than DOT is planning. However, we recognize we're in one of the most lean years we've been in a long, long time. So,
Do you need action here?
yes, you're functioning as a transportation committee right now. So if the full COG were not to meet on August, what is it, 19th, this will get to DOT before the deadline for sending our rankings in.
So you need a motion to accept?
Approves staff's ranking.
I make that motion to approve staff's ranking.
Yeah, I'll second that.
Motion and seconded. Any further comment? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? Okay, so it's a unanimous vote. We'll send that to DOT.
Again, I want to commend Justin and Kate for a thorough review of this very well done memo that explains what we're working on. This is an important funding program that you all control that results in some meaningful purchases that help a lot of people in our region. So thank you, staff.
Indeed. Well, yeah, very good work. It made it very easy to understand. Thank you. Jim, you can carry on.
Okay, the next item, Mr. Chairman, Resolution 20-4. It's proposed resolution relating to our annual regional service grant. Normally, I'd just say this is our annual regional service grant. We receive approximately 300 and I think it's 20,000. But I want to pause for a moment and just explain a couple things. We're still operating under the formula that was concocted, now it's 7-8 years ago when the regions merged and a couple of the regions received what was referred to as bonus money. They receive approximately an additional 50%. It was to cover the cost of the merger. Although we didn't merge, we did receive towns from WinCog and lost a town to Northeast Cog. But for years now, the non-merged cogs have been saying, whoa, 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 wait a minute, you're cutting up this pot of money, this statewide pot of money, and there's a few cogs that are benefiting from an old formula. And every year we're told, oh, it's in statute and it's got to be changed. Well, the General Assembly never changes it. I just wanted to note to you, it's still not changed. We're going to get our same amount of money, and darn it, we'll be very grateful for it. But the second thing I want to note is the COG directors met on a Zoom call yesterday. We're a little nervous about the fact that we've not received a proposed contract from OPM yet. And we intend to inquire of the secretary and the undersecretary about that. We have had contracts offered late in the past, but we're wondering if this has anything to do with the state's anticipated fiscal condition. Does it have something to do with an item we're going to talk about later, which is the COG work and state reimbursement for our work on the COVID recovery? So I just note that for you in case we have to discuss it again, but I do need to get an RSG resolution allowing the chairman and myself to accept the grant should it be forthcoming. We do expect that it's going to come to us, but so I would ask for a motion to approve this, and in light of, if in fact the full COG doesn't meet, we'll send the resolution on up to OPM based on the executive committee's action.
Looking for a motion.
So move.
Second.
Tom and Fred. Further comment? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Are there any abstain? Any that abstain? Okay. Motion carries. Amanda, do you know who's coming in by phone? Doesn't matter.
Jim Rivers, maybe?
That's why I'm wondering if you have a member sitting here by phone.
Did they just disappear?
They may have just disappeared.
All right. Well, that takes care of that. I did write the number down, so I'll try to figure out who that was.
Okay. Very good.
The next item is the TMA certification review and COG response. This is on really for two reasons. One is to discuss the report that was submitted to us by FHWA back in early July. Kate, Amanda, and I formulated a response to that, which I included in your agenda packet. And we responded to many of the 29 recommendations that were in the report. There was one corrective action that we must take. The recommended actions should be addressed as best we can. Not all do we think we can address to fully satisfy them. And those are the ones that we questioned or asked for clarification about. For example, the recommendation that CONDOT have a seat on our MPO board. There is no MPO in the state that has a representative of CONDOT on the board. We've discussed with Mary Beth Wojensky, who's a fairly high-level manager at DOT, as to who that person might be should DOT were to appoint somebody to all the MPO boards. And we said it can't be the field coordinator because the field coordinator can't make decisions. The field coordinator basically acts as a conduit between the state and the region. In fact, the field coordinator doesn't attend every meeting. He tries to attend every other meeting because he has to go to another MPO board meeting. So we're looking at things like that. We did respond to their recommendation that SEAT have a representative on our board. You see in my written response, we noted that due to a change in the constitution of the SEAT board several years ago, of the 10 or 11 SEAT board members, I think 8 or 9, 9 or 10 are members of the MPO. They're COG chief elected officials. We could probably formalize that with an MOA as FHWA recommends. So I anticipate a dialogue from FHWA and FTA, a response to our response. I don't have that now. In fact, I haven't even received acknowledgement of what we sent them by their requested deadline. So I hope they have it and are looking at it. Some of the items Kate and Amanda have already started thinking about how we would address them and have discussed that with me. So I'd be happy to pause here if you'd like me to discuss their report. This is a quadrennial review report with the recommended actions. When we last did this 4 years ago, I believe we received maybe a half a dozen, 10 recommendations. These staff at FHW and FTA has turned over. This was basically a new group. There was only a couple people held over from the previous review. So they did a very thorough job.
And made some recommendations that you're answering to that may be inappropriate or you feel differently on and whatever. What is the pleasure of the group? I've read through it. I also had some conversations with Jim. We can run through it line by line, or we can. What are you looking for today? A recommendation? Or
No, this was more for conversation and discussion.
Conversation.
I don't think it requires any executive committee or COG action yet. I did put it on as, and maybe I should have had a sub issue under this because left over from our meeting last month, there was discussion. In fact, Mr. Blacker was joined us on the call. Mr. Blacker, under public communications at the last meeting, talked about the ability of State Pier to handle freight in the past versus what will be happening in the future. And at that meeting, I mentioned that the Federal Highway Administration, in our discussions on the TMA certification review, actually raised the issue of our freight planning, our ability to accommodate freight transport in our region. And on one of the calls that led to the report, I believe it was Jennifer Carrier from FHWA who said, well, you've got State Pier. That's a tremendous asset. And we pointed out at the time that things were changing. They continued to state that in the original report. They noted that we have the ability to accommodate in our region freight coming in by container ship in the Port of New London. So I have that's on page 25. And in my response to them, I suggested that they revise that to read as follows, which I believe is a little more accurate. And I would like to read this. Should be revised to read, the region has a wide range of transportation assets, including freight rail, major truck routes, including I-95, which is part of the National Highway Freight Network, and until recently, a deep water port, the State Pier in New London. Recently, the Connecticut Port Authority, which has been granted jurisdiction over the use of the state's 3 deep water ports, has entered into an exclusive long-term agreement with Gateway Terminal, the Danish wind company Ørsted, and Eversource to allow the assembly of wind turbines at State Pier. The State Pier Harbor Development Plan calls for a 2-phased effort at State Pier. First, a 3-year development project will upgrade the facility infrastructure to meet the heavy lift requirements of Ørsted and Eversource's offshore wind components. Second, following the successful completion of the project, Ørsted and Eversource will enter into a 10-year lease agreement granting their joint venture the use of State Pier for wind turbine generator assembly and staging. The agreement has an option to allow an extension an additional 7 years. This agreement will result in the State Pier being unavailable for freight use other than that associated with the wind industry for possibly the next 20 years, significantly impacting the freight network in southeastern Connecticut. Now, I believe that's accurate based on our study of the Connecticut Port Authority sites, what we've read in the news media, et cetera. I do think it deserves correction in this report. It might make sense for us. I would suggest to you that we write a letter to the Commissioner of the Department of Transportation, possibly copy FHWA, our contacts there, and Connecticut Port Authority Chairman Couros, and note our concern over that and say that this was raised by the Federal Highway Administration during our review. Without State Pier in New London, our freight planning program in southeastern Connecticut as an MPO, there's not a lot we can plan on. Kate, correct me if I'm wrong. That's been since Dick Guggenheim had hair and was our senior transportation planner back 50 years ago. This agency conducted studies at State Pier, coordinated activities at State Pier. We used to meet with the old operator. When I first became employed here, Dick would drag me to meetings with the DOT representative who would come down to State Pier in New London. I even remember his name. And we would meet in one of the trailers there, and we'd go over activity for the last 6 months. They kept us informed as the MPO. We've not had that relationship with DOT in recent years, and probably a lot of that has to do with the operator and the changing nature of what was going on at State Pier.
I think that since both the Port Authority and the airports group have been
Airport Authority.
Yeah, the Airport Authority have been cycled out of DOT. The coordination has not been as good, and that happened, I think, 3 years ago.
And I'm not sure that FHWA and FTA, which oversees transportation planning at the statewide and then the MPO level, is fully aware of that. They are now, as we're starting to tell them that.
So Jim, I like your suggestion of sending a letter to the recipients that you mentioned, voicing and looking for a consensus here, if not a vote, voicing our concern over the lack of freight infrastructure and any compromise or any expansion of that area. They could grab more land or whatever so that we could have multiple functions down there would serve us all as a region. Maybe that's, if anyone opposes that or thinks that that's not
that would be my the ask in the letter. We would know how this came up. I mean, it didn't have to come up through the review. We knew it was happening.
Yeah.
The COG members have discussed it among themselves. Mayor Passero has brought it up over the year or so. And I think, we would like to ask that it the peer plan be relooked at and hopefully given some multiple use function.
Mr. Chairman, if I could.
Yeah.
So Kevin Blacker had a piece in the Connecticut Examiner recently, and he had snippets of the Malone and McBroom report in there, a very reputable agency or firm, I should say. I guess what I don't understand is with that report and how that report shows multiple uses, how did we end up with all our eggs in one basket with the Orsted thing, which I think is, it's a little alarming when you put everything in one basket like that, because if something goes sideways, you got 100% of nothing instead of at least some pieces still functioning. So I urge you to read Kevin's email and his piece in the Examiner this morning too.
Kevin sent that email to everybody, I believe, this morning.
He did, and I support what you want to do too, Jim.
So Jim, you want to go ahead and is there anyone in opposition of sending that letter? If not, Jim, go ahead and.
I'll draft that for your review and signature,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Chairman, if that's
Thank you.
okay.
I appreciate that. I couldn't do it on my own. That's why we have Jim. Thank you on that. Let's you got the ELDS dredge spoils.
This was an information item you may recall a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago now. We were engaged by Congressman Courtney's office as a COG to participate in discussions concerning the state of New York's appeal of US EPA's decision to allow the disposition of dredge spoils in eastern Long Island Sound. This was east, I believe, of the old New London dumping grounds. EPA had conducted a EIS process that allowed dredge spoils to be deposited there. The state of New York appealed. I forgot the name of this, Rosario versus US EPA, I guess. And what happened was an amicus curiae brief was filed. Our COG was involved with that. You agreed to allow us to be involved, a party to that. We were asked to ask the other coastal councils of government in Connecticut to participate, and they all did. We joined Cross Sound Ferry, Connecticut Marine Trade Association, a bunch of other people that are involved in the use of the water that realize the importance of dredging. And I believe it was a United States District Court, District Court in the state of New York, just released its decision at the end of July, upholding EPA's decision to allow the disposition of the material there. Whether or not the state of New York appeals that to a higher court, we don't know at this point. I sent you all a copy of the decision separate from the agenda because it was quite large. If you haven't read it, though, just the first few pages, the judge is really, really a great writer. He does a great job explaining the case, and I think he used very pragmatic knowledge as he worked his way through all the points that New York raised and how he addressed them. So, good decision.
Thank you.
And this requires no action, right?
Okay.
The TIP-STIP amendments, there is one. This is a good project. It's the 5307 program request for DOT. For SEAT, program similar to our 5310 for our towns. This allows SEAT to replace 2016 paratransit vehicles. This would appropriate funds for that. And the total requested federal funds is $360,000, be matched by $90,000 by the state. So the appropriate action would be to recommend approval to the full COG. And again, if we cancel the August meeting, we'll forward these directly to CONDOT after that date.
Thank you.
I'll move that, Mark.
Second that one.
Second to Fred. Any comments, questions, concerns? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
All right.
Any opposed? Any abstain? Okay. Motion carries. Funding for COG work.
Well,
Update us.
as you know, back in March, we received a directive from Demis, who we were working with on COVID response in your towns, that we were not allowed to charge any of that time to our Demis funds. We said, okay, we'll charge them to our regional service grant. I don't remember exactly when, but we received a very brief letter that I forwarded to you from Secretary Melissa McCarr at OPM that we couldn't use regional service grant funds for that. I argued at the time to my fellow COG directors that we needed to immediately address that and say, no, Secretary, you're wrong. Well, we're doing exactly what our spending plan says we're supposed to do, coordinate activity among our towns, help our towns in addressing things. And what was different here was we were doing it with the pandemic over our heads. It was a health-related coordination as opposed to formulating a regional ethics commission or assisting you with, coastal management planning. So that being said, we were then encouraged to participate as 9 COGs working together with the state and apply for CARES Act funding the state had received for our work from March 1st through June 30th and July 1st, which we just went through July, up to December 31st. Related to that, we were then encouraged to also apply jointly for an EDA grant for the next 2 years to do this ongoing recovery work the state has asked us to do. Now, I should point out, we've never received a gubernatorial or lieutenant governor directive, COGS, we need you to do this recovery work. We were responding to agents of the state who work for the Department of Emergency Management, Homeland Security, Division of DESP, and that, of course, is Mike Caplet, to do this work. And we've been on these calls with the Lieutenant Governor, Lisa Tepper Bates, and we now have formed these recovery steering committees, and we're starting to stand up working groups. And on our staff, Kate, Amanda, and now Sam, a little bit Wendy, have been involved. We might involve one other staff if the funding's improved, Carly, going forward. But we still have yet to receive a response to our requests for funding under the CARES Act. The COG directors have kicked this around at a couple meetings. We had a Zoom call yesterday. I suggested we either immediately stop or pick a date 2 weeks out and say if we can't receive a response by then, our chief elected officials I had already talked about this with Mark as recently as last Friday. We shouldn't be doing this work unless we know where the funding's coming from, because if it's not the state funding or the federal funding coming through the state, it's going to be your funding. It's going to be local dues. It might require an increase in dues going forward. It could be reserve funds, et cetera. I will tell you that I've figured out how to, through the end of the fiscal year, I think we're okay. We're not reporting anything different than we normally do. Pretty sure we had enough RSG funds to cover it, and I'm confident that RSG should cover it. If I have to back some money out, we can do that and put it under local dues. In any event, that's another thing I have to remind the state of is we've got our auditors coming in and we have to know how to close the books for the year. So one director yesterday suggested a letter to Lieutenant Governor Bysowitz, who, as we know, has been named by the governor to head up this effort, point out that we've not heard back from the secretary, despite our request to her through her undersecretary, Martin Heft, a former first selectman, who is our contact, but I got a feeling he's not as pro-COG as some of our previous undersecretaries have been. For whatever reason, this secretary has never met with the COG directors. We are thinking of inviting her to our next CT COG meeting, which is in 10 days. Another director felt that would be an end around and we shouldn't do that. That was Mr. Filchak from Northeast, but he didn't have another solution. So after I heard this discussion, I just raised my hand again and said, look, the only way we're going to get their attention is stop doing the work and just say we can't. I said, I have an executive committee meeting tomorrow. I'm sure they would agree with me that that's probably, at this point, we're 5 months into this. We're in our 5th month doing this type of work, and we're getting nothing from the state other than it's coming, it's coming. I don't even know if we're getting it's coming right now. Mike Caplet says he raises it every time he meets with Lisa Tepper Bates, and she says, Mike, I know what you're going to say. Don't say it. I'm working on it. I'm not asking you to do anything now. In fact, please don't direct me to do anything now because the COG directors have agreed we'll wait till our meeting in 10 days. I can't remember the date. And then at that time, I think we're going to take some time of action. I don't anticipate hearing anything by then, but I could be pleasantly surprised and I would let you know immediately. So I wanted to let you know, we're in good shape. We haven't had to incur any costs that we don't have funds to cover. We're not paying for this out of reserve now, but going forward, we might have to. So It's just disappointing that our relationship with OPM is so different than it used to be. They're supposed to be our, godparent at the state level.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we've seen this far too many times, and there should be some decisive action up there about including us in the funding. I mean, we saw this with the election liaison that we're supposed to hire and watch over local elections. That funding got pulled away after, having it for about 30 seconds. And the next thing on your agenda is the Regional Recovery Steering Committee that we're doing much of the work, and we're not expected to receive any funding for that. I didn't want to jump ahead, but this is an ongoing theme with the state that if they want us to do more and more work, there should be more and more funding to support that. We could do it more efficiently. We know that. We can do it. We got a crack staff here for the 3 or 4 of you, or 4 of you are included here, and many more behind the scenes. We can get it done, but let us do it and fund it properly.
Mr. Chairman, I said yesterday on that call that I would appreciate a response from the state. We ran out of CARES Act funding, or we have to spend it elsewhere. We really need you to do this work. Would you work with your municipalities to find the funding to make it happen? I would appreciate that, but we haven't even been able to get that kind of answer. So if you'd like to jump ahead to the next one, I'll just, without going into too much detail, you mentioned we're doing all the work, and you saw an email I sent to my colleague, Mr. Filchak at Northeast COG. We had a recovery steering committee meeting that they hosted. We had agreed we'd host every other one. And it was a disaster in that the person that was hosting the call, I don't even think had been briefed by John that they were hosting. She wasn't on the call at the beginning. When she did get on the call, she didn't really know enough about Zoom. First time I've ever seen a Zoom bomb, and we got Zoom bombed, and it was not pleasant. It disrupted the meeting. It caused some people to leave. They did get back on. We were able to complete our business. Amanda, Sam, and I then sat down after the meeting. There were other things that, the agenda wasn't sent out in a timely fashion. We had to prompt them to send it out. I said, instead of us having to prompt them every other meeting, why don't we just take over that function? We'll be the chief administrator of the Recovery Steering Committee. And I put this in writing to John Filchak and Mike Caplet, and we suggested they take on 2 of the working groups. We'll do the main committee and the other working group. I said it would probably be easier rather than handing off back and forth. I sent that out a couple weeks ago, no response. A couple days ago, I sent out a reminder to John, could you please at least respond to this? What do you think of this proposal? I've received nothing. Mike Caplet emailed me yesterday and said, Jim, are you going to call him? I said, Mike, 2 emails. Can't get him to call me back. Maybe you should call him. I've seen this before. We worked with NECOG on a HUD grant a few years ago. We've worked with them on the DEMIS. That's why we stood up and became the fiduciary. For whatever reason, I don't know what it is. It's not personal. We get along fine. But they do things differently at their COG than we do. That's the best way I can put it. We like things on time. We want to get the agenda out on time. We want to get the proper Zoom information out. We want to control the meeting so people can't come into the meeting that don't belong there. And we're capable of doing that. So I'll keep you posted. Mike will hopefully get John to agree to our solution, but we're forced by the state to work with a different COG. And their COG is different in that their chief elected officials have different concerns than you. Many of them are part-time people. They're very small towns with very small staff. But we're working in a DEMIS region, so it's involving all 42 towns. So
very good.
That's where we are. I don't have anything in the other category, believe it or not, unless I've forgotten something, Amanda. I did send out a request by the state for you to appoint a drought coordinator. Please let Mike Caplet know as soon as possible. We did I had a conversation with the state first saying, why are you doing this? We have regional water committees. Do you really want somebody in every town? And Eric Lindquist from OPM did call me, and the state feels there are potential for micro droughts, areas that are very small in a town that would require local knowledge to pass on to the state. So if you don't have a good person in mind, they're suggesting your emergency management director.
Or the director of COG.
Thanks. That's fine with me. That's fine. I can do that.
Yeah.
But then I'll have to call you to say, where's the drought?
Yeah, then we'll go, where's the money? Because
I'll know all the local golf courses and how dry they are, Tom, right?
they're dry, right? Sure, Jim, we'll get on that. Just another committee, another Zoom meeting for someone. God bless. Okay. Is there anything else?
Jim, was there the thing about the New London resolution in here?
Oh,
other
God,
items?
thank you. I wrote it down, and Mayor Allen, you saved my butt. Thank you. Jesus. Mayor Passero would kill me. Thank you. I did send out yesterday an email from Mayor Passero to me, which had an attachment, and I quickly discussed this with the chairman this morning. Mayor Passero is proposing a resolution, and it's a resolution by me, which I found interesting. I believe it's to provide support for an outfit or a business called Till Biofashion Tech Inc., which will use New England wool. They will clean it and scour it at a facility they want to develop in New London, and they will produce luxury wool garments and in New England wool shoes. And I have no idea what that is. And from the letter that was attached to this by Mr. Mike Critelli, who used to be the CEO of Pitney Bowes, it appears they're applying for CT Next partnership funding. That's what CT Next is. What was it called? Used to be called up in Rocky Hill, Amanda. CERC. That's CT Next now. So.
Oh, I thought that was advanced CT.
Yeah.
Oh,
that's
what's
right.
CT Next? Is that a program Advanced CT is running?
Well, I know CT Next strip, but I don't.
Fund innovation.
Yeah.
Okay. But first of all, I said to the chairman, I'm not sure. I said, I don't know that we need a resolution because many of our towns have new businesses that come to them that want to locate in buildings. And I used Legoland from 30 years ago as an example. To me, that would rise to the level of something that the COG would want to have a resolution of support for, because it's it's a national, it would have national and eastern, not eastern seaboard impact. We've supported ventures at the Preston Riverwalk before. This is the location of one business into a building, the old day building in New London. And I think a letter of support that I could draft for the chairman to send to CT Next would be appropriate.
Yeah, at the
I
very
agree.
most, I don't think we need a resolution. I don't think it's a regional. As your example is dead on with Legoland and whatever they're going to build.
I would note Kate's smiling about the woolen shoes, so I think she's kind of excited about the wool.
She's excited.
Yeah.
Sure.
Amanda met with the CEO or the founder, Jane Philbrick, a while ago. A few months ago, she's closing her eyes because she described the meeting to me. This woman is really out there.
Well, I think you have to be cutting edge wool manufacturers in America these days. So
check out their website. And for those of you who have people in your life that might like high fashion stuff made in wool, share it with them. But the bios of the people in the company are really interesting, including Mr. Kip Bergstrom, who used to work for the Rhode Island. He had something to do with the redevelopment of Narragansett, the old naval yard there. And then he came and worked for DECD, I think. And he's kind of a way out there spaceman himself. Now he describes himself as he's a
Jim?
consultant to them, but he's a chef.
Yeah, Jim, noting that the meeting is being recorded.
Thank you, Mr. You know what? I never say anything that I would regret.
No. You're one of the kindest people I know. So you just listen. This is a different thing, and like my point was, you kind of have to be out there to push the envelope sometimes.
Yep.
And this is God bless. We're making wool in America again, and maybe all the things in my closet won't be imported, which. I'm not boasting or complaining. I'm just stating a fact, and it'll be great if we. I think manufacturing is a good thing coming back, and I know your intentions were all kind and not anything but that. But I think a letter to let's recap this. A letter from Jim saying, a letter of support of a business opening up in our region is a good thing, and we should all work toward supporting manufacturing and development of any kind of business in our region. Resolution might be a little too much. I mean, I have a business that's trying to open up in East Lyme. I'm not looking for the COG to bless it. Enough said, right? Good.
Agree.
Yeah, Fred, thanks for reminding us both that we did have that addition to the agenda.
Sure.
So very good. I thank you all for your participation in this.
Mr. Chairman, do we have a telecall with the COG scheduled right now? I can't remember. Do we need to take an action on the meeting now, or will you wait until August 19th and make a decision a few days before?
I think I'll lean on the staff to you and leadership to figure out if we do have anything to have a meeting on. You mentioned a few things that could carry on to today. Some of our items on our agenda today could move on without the blessing of the full COG. Listen, let's see where the world is in a couple of weeks, and we can make that decision about a week before, maybe.
And we can keep it short too. But it might make sense to have
August
it short.
12th, you and I are going to have to meet either by Zoom, by phone, or by the 18th green, and figure this out. All right. Very good.
I just want to, before you close, I just want to note for everybody here that's interested in golf, our chairman has a serious game. I had the pleasure of playing with him twice in the last few weeks.
Wow.
And he can play.
Yeah, it was after work hours.
Yeah, absolutely.
Since we're being recorded. And I'm trying to wrap this meeting up because I'm trying to squeeze in 18 before the rain starts. Okay. So I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. It's a work day. We all have Mark, a lot to do.
Mark, I just got a quick question before we go. Just for identification. Who's the 917 caller? Do we know?
Amanda, we should ask if they would like to identify themselves. If you're on the phone, you hit *6, or is it #6?
I just unmuted the caller if they'd like to identify themselves.
For the record, if you're on the phone, 917-5048.
Looks like they just jumped off.
They got scared. So, Tom, you are so intimidating, man. You're like breaking kneecaps over there in Lisbon. So, if there's nothing else, it's been a very productive meeting, but we all have to go tide things down with the storm coming. I guess tornado warnings have just popped up on some of the weather reports now in Demis. So do take it seriously. I wish you all well, and hopefully we don't have to go to opening shelters and shutting down town halls and all that stuff. But get through this and enjoy the rest of the summer if we don't meet again anytime sooner. All good?
Thank you very much.
I'll call a meeting to adjourn. All in favor?
Yep.
Aye.
Yeah. All right. See y'all.
Great day, everybody.
Bye-bye. Thank
See
you.
you.